The HOA president believed she was untouchable when she rolled her brand new $100,000 SUV straight onto my private lawn. I warned her 3 separate times that the soil beneath that patch wasn't solid, but she only laughed and dismissed me like I was invisible. What she didn't realize was that my 1920s property concealed a 10-foot deep secret buried exactly where she had parked. 10 minutes later, the earth split open, and the president was left shrieking as her luxury vehicle sank into a century's worth of filth. What happened next ended with the law forcing her to pay me for the destruction. The morning sun had just begun to kiss the dew on Alex's lawn when the peaceful quiet of the neighborhood was shattered by the growl of a high-performance engine. Linda, the notoriously entitled HOA president, never simply drove through the streets. She cruised them like a ruler inspecting her kingdom. Today, she wasn't just cruising. She was sending a message. With a sharp flick of the steering wheel and a smug smirk, she guided her brand new $100,000 luxury SUV off the pavement and directly onto the thick emerald grass of Alex's private property. Alex had been finishing his morning coffee on the porch when he saw it happen. He blinked, stunned. He had spent years caring for that exact stretch of lawn, nurturing it season after season. To Linda, however, it was nothing more than a convenient VIP parking space for her upcoming neighborhood elite brunch. He stepped down from the porch, keeping his voice measured but firm. Linda, that's private property. There's a perfectly good driveway 10 feet away. Please move your vehicle before you ruin the turf. Linda didn't even grant him a full glance as she adjusted her oversized designer sunglasses. She stepped out, the heavy door slamming shut with thud that echoed along the otherwise quiet street. Listen, Alex, she said sharply, her tone soaked in condescension. As president of this HOA, I make sure this community maintains perfection. My driveway is being resealed, and I refuse to let my tires get dusty on the street. That little patch of grass of yours is the only acceptable place for a vehicle of this caliber. Anger flared in Alex's chest, but he knew Linda thrived on confrontation. He steadied himself and issued one final warning. Linda, I'm serious. That ground isn't as stable as it looks. You're trespassing, and you're putting that expensive SUV at serious risk. Her laughter rang out, sharp and mocking, loud enough to carry down the block. Stable? Risk? Please. You're just bitter because you can't stand a woman in power. I'll park wherever I choose. And if you so much as touch my car, I'll have you fined into bankruptcy before sunset. With one final chirp of her key fob, she strutted toward her house, leaving the massive SUV positioned directly over the one thing Alex knew would seal her fate, the long-forgotten septic tank buried beneath the grass. When Linda's front door slammed shut, an uneasy silence settled over the yard, broken only by the ticking of the SUV's cooling engine. Alex stood on his porch and watched as the vehicle seemed to settle ever so slightly into the soft ground. Most neighbors saw nothing but a well-kept lawn. Alex, however, knew the property's history better than anyone. Beneath that exact patch lay a relic from 1924, a massive concrete septic tank that had been decommissioned decades ago. It wasn't just outdated. It was hollow. Over nearly a century, damp soil had slowly eroded its concrete lid. The structure had grown brittle, weakened by time. Alex had scheduled professionals to fill it next month. Linda's arrogance had simply accelerated the timetable. An average sedan might have rested there for days without consequence. But Linda's prize vehicle was a 3-ton beast of steel and glass. Every passing minute added pressure to the rusted rebar and thinning concrete shell buried barely 2 feet below the surface. Inside her house, Linda was probably boasting to her guests about putting Alex in his place, completely unaware that gravity was preparing to return the favor. Alex pulled out his phone and began recording, not out of amusement, but in preparation for the inevitable legal battle. He carefully captured the property line markers and the clearly posted signs. Private property. No parking. Then he heard it, a low, rhythmic creaking from beneath the earth. It was the sound of 100 years of structural integrity finally surrendering. A thin crack snaked through the soil near the rear tire, and a faint puff of dust rose from the ground. The SUV shifted slightly to one side, its alarm chirping once, almost like a distressed cry for help. Alex stepped back. The stable ground Linda had mocked was seconds away from transforming into a 10-foot pit of history and decay. Her pride was about to take a very literal and very expensive fall. The air carried the scent of expensive perfume and grilled appetizers drifting from Linda's gathering. But on Alex's lawn, the only odor was a damp, metallic smell of disturbed earth. He kept filming, hands steady, as the soil began to groan like a wounded animal. And then it happened. The ground didn't merely crack. It collapsed, a thunderous snap, sharp as a gunshot, echoed down the street as a century-old concrete lid shattered beneath the crushing 3-ton weight. The rear of the SUV didn't gently sink. It plunged violently. The back half of the $100,000 vehicle vanished into the earth, while front wheels spun helplessly midair like a stranded turtle flipped onto its shell. Then came the smell, a nauseating, overpowering stench. 100 years of stagnant waste and rotted history, sealed since the 1920s, now violently unleashed into morning air. The elite brunched next. Door came to a screeching halt as Theodore hit the guests like a physical wall. Linda burst through her front door, her face turning from a smug grin to a mask of pure horror as she saw her prized possession sticking out of the ground at a 45 degrees angle. "My car! Alex, what did you do to my SAR?" she shrieked, sprinting across the lawn in her designer heels, only to stop short as she realized her luxury parking spot was now a bubbling pit of sewage and debris. Alex didn't lower his phone. "I told you, Linda. I told you 3 times. The ground wasn't stable. You're trespassing in private property, and now you've literally driven yourself into a hole." Linda was hysterical, her voice reaching a pitch that set off neighbors' dogs. "You trapped me. This is assault. This is property damage. I'm calling the police, the fire department, and the HOA board. You're going to jail for this." As she frantically dialed 911, the SUV gave one final gut-wrenching lurch, sinking another foot deeper into the slime. The frame twisted with the sound off screeching metal, and the sunroof shattered under pressure. Linda watched in stunned silence as interior her leather-clad dream began to fill with the very filth Alex had tried to warn her about. The president's authority was gone. All that was left was a very expensive wreck in a very smelly hole. The flashing blue and red lights of 3 police cruisers illuminated the neighborhood, casting a rhythmic glow over the disaster site on Alex's lawn. Linda was already at the lead officer's window before he could even put the car in park. She was hysterical, her designer heels caked in mud, screaming about malicious traps and criminal property damage. "Officer, arrest this man. He intentionally sabotaged his yard to destroy my vehicle. This is a $100,000 loss," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Alex, who was calmly leaning against his porch railing with his phone still in hand. The lead officer, a veteran who had dealt with Linda's HOA complaints before, looked at the SUV, now buried up to its windows in a pit of sewage, and then at Alex. "Sir, did you dig this hole to trap this vehicle?" the officer asked. Alex didn't say a word. He simply handed over his phone and played the video from part 1. The officer watched it as Linda ignored 3 separate warnings. He heard her mock, "Alex, call him broke and state clearly on camera, I'll park where I want, when I want." The officer's face hardened. He turned back to Linda. "Ma'am, you were warned that the ground was unstable. You were told you were trespassing on private property. This isn't a trap. It's a century-old septic tank that you decided to use as a parking lot against the owner's explicit orders." But the nightmare was just beginning for the HOA president. When the tow truck arrived, the driver took one look at the situation and refused to hook up the vehicle. "It's a biohazard and a structural risk," he said. "If I pull that out, I might collapse the rest of the yard. You need a specialized crane team, and that's going to cost $5,000 just for the call-out." The final nail in the coffin came the next morning when Linda's insurance adjuster arrived. Because Alex had provided the police with the video evidence of her being warned and her willful trespassing, the insurance company denied her claim entirely under the illegal acts and gross negligence clause. She was on the hook for every penny of the $100,000 SUV. Alex didn't stop there. A week later, Linda was served with a massive lawsuit. Alex's lawyer pointed out that her unauthorized weight had destroyed a historical septic system and caused environmental contamination on his land. The court ordered Linda to pay $25,000 for specialized soil remediation and the installation of a new modern drainage system for Alex. The HOA board, embarrassed by the national attention the sunk president video received on social media, held an emergency meeting. They stripped Linda of her presidency and banned her from holding any office in the future. Today, Alex has a brand new reinforced driveway and a beautiful garden, all paid for by the woman who thought she was above the law. Linda, on the other hand, is seen driving an old beat-up sedan, and she never ever parks in the grass. My YouTube channel DH Story. My channel. Subscribe and this video likes, comments, and video share. Thanks.